On Father's Day, I received a neatly wrapped box on our front porch, a surprise delivery with no return address. My wife, Elaine, glanced at it and suddenly froze. "David," she whispered, "don't open it." I blinked. "Why not?" She leaned closer, her voice barely audible. "Look at the holes." My eyes traced the surface of the box, tiny, deliberate punctures. Breathing holes. The air around us changed. A slow, cold knot twisted in my stomach. Something was alive in there, and someone knew we'd be home. Before I could process the implications, I felt a deep, instinctual dread settle in, the kind you don't shake off easily. It wasn't the box itself that frightened me. It was the thought of who might have sent it, and why. What kind of person sends a living creature as a gift on Father's Day? What kind of daughter? Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. Your support helps us bring more powerful true stories like this to light, and trust me, you'll want to hear how this one ends. This isn't just about a mysterious box. It's about the unraveling of a family, the final line a father drew after 3 decades of sacrifice, and the venom, both literal and emotional, that came back in return. If you think you've seen toxic family dynamics before, wait until you hear what was really inside that package, and what I decided to do after opening it. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when my daughter, Sophia, would make me handmade cards with crayon hearts and misspelled words, when her joy was genuine and her affection uncalculated. But time has a cruel way of sharpening edges, especially when money starts to overshadow love. The fight started, as they often did, in our living room, a space meant for family warmth, not cold accusations. The Persian rug we bought for our 20th anniversary was the first casualty. A coffee cup exploded against the floor, its contents spreading like a stain we both knew would never truly come out. Sophia's face burned red, her hands still trembling. "Dad, do you even understand?" She snapped. "I need the money now, not after you die." I didn't flinch, but my grip tightened on the folder in my lap. Inside were the inheritance documents I had revised and reviewed a dozen times. 34 years of work, of overtime shifts and missed vacations, all laid out in legal language meant to protect her future. And now she was treating it like a demand slip. "Sophia," I said, my voice firm but calm, "I'm not a bank. You'll get your inheritance when the time comes." That's when Tyler leaned forward, lounging with infuriating ease on our leather sofa. "Come on, David," he said with a smirk. "She's your only daughter. What's a few $1,000 to help out family?" My jaw clenched. Last month it was a loan for Tyler's credit card debt. Before that, Sophia's emergency shopping spree. The requests never stopped, just grew bolder, more entitled. "Help you out?" I said, rising slowly. My 6 two-year-old knees popped in protest, but I stood tall. "I've been helping you for 3 years, Tyler. My retirement fund isn't your lifeline." Elaine appeared in the doorway, her dish towel twisted tight in her hands. "Please," she said gently, "let's all just take a breath and talk this through." But Sophia wasn't hearing it. She spun toward her mother, her voice sharp. "He's sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars while we're drowning in debt." "Debt you created," I said quietly. "Debt from your choices." A silence dropped between us like a curtain. The family photo on the mantel, one of our favorites, was suddenly facing downward. Had it fallen during the commotion? Or had someone turned it deliberately? Its silver frame reflected the ceiling light, cold and empty. Tyler leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Look, old man," he said, his tone slipping into something darker. "You're not getting any younger. Why not enjoy sharing your wealth while you're still around to see it appreciated?" Old man. The words landed like a slap. This coming from someone who had never held a job for longer than a season, who lived off my daughter's credit cards and my reluctant generosity. "I worked 43 years for that money," I said. My voice rose with each word, not out of anger but conviction. 12-hour days, missed anniversaries, no vacations. All so Sophia could have the best childhood possible. So your mother and I could retire with dignity. Dignity? Sophia laughed, bitter, sharp. "What's dignified about hoarding money while your daughter suffers?" My eyes scanned her expensive handbag, her manicured nails, her highlighted hair. Her suffering looked suspiciously designer. "Your suffering is self-inflicted," I said, the words escaping before I could stop them. Every emergency, every crisis, you created them. All of them. Elaine stepped fully into the room now, pale and shaking. David, she said cautiously, maybe we should... Should what? Sophia shrieked. Keep enabling his selfishness? Pretending he's a loving father when all he cares about is his bank account? The accusations hit harder than any thrown object. Selfish, greedy, unloving. Was that really who she thought I was? Tyler stood, his smirk gone, replaced by something colder. You enjoy this, don't you? He said. Watching us struggle. Makes you feel powerful. Get out, I said. The words came from a place deeper than anger, deeper even than hurt. Both of you. Get out of my house. Your house? Sophia's eyes narrowed. This place that Mom helped pay for? The house where I grew up? You think you can just throw your family out like trash? Watch me, I said, walking to the door and opening it wide. The evening air rolled in, fragrant with honeysuckle, indifferent to the tension inside our home. Somewhere nearby, neighbors laughed over dinner. Laughter when had we last done that as a family? Sophia, I said without turning, take your husband, leave, and don't come back until you're ready to talk about your problems with respect and without involving my wallet. You'll regret this, she hissed, grabbing her purse. One day you'll be old, sick, and alone, and you'll remember this moment. Her heels cracked across the hardwood like gunfire. Tyler paused at the threshold. This isn't over, old man, he muttered. Family doesn't abandon family. The door slammed behind them, rattling the frame, and just like that, the silence was back. But this time it wasn't peaceful. It was hollow. I stood there at the door, my hand still on the brass handle, watching their car reverse out of our driveway like they were escaping a battlefield. Elaine approached slowly. David, she whispered, what just happened? I turned to face her. The living room looked ravaged. Coffee stains smeared the rug. The inheritance documents lay scattered like fallen leaves. The overturned photo on the mantel blinked mockingly in the lamplight. 43 years, I said, almost to myself. All of it, for this. She bent down and began picking up the papers with quiet precision. She's struggling, she said. We both know that. Struggling? I repeated, shaking my head. No, Elaine. She's not struggling. She's gambling. She's spending recklessly. She's manipulating us. And we've let her do it. I walked over to the mantel and set the photo upright again. A younger Sophia stared back at me, missing teeth, sitting on my shoulders at the county fair. When did she become this? I whispered. Elaine's eyes glistened. But she didn't answer. She didn't need to. We both knew. It hadn't happened overnight. It had happened by inches every check we'd written, every time we said yes instead of no, every time we confused enabling with love. And now our daughter, the little girl in that photograph, had just walked out our door after accusing us of abandoning her, after throwing a tantrum that shattered a mug and possibly something more permanent. And I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever came next was going to be even worse. The house stayed quiet that night, but the silence had changed. It wasn't the calm of peace. It was the kind that settles after something breaks. Elaine and I moved around each other like ghosts, cleaning up the aftermath in the living room without needing to speak. She refolded the documents. I scrubbed the coffee from the rug, even though I knew the stain would outlast our efforts. The family photo had been righted, but it felt like a lie now, 5-year-old Sophia smiling, frozen in a memory that no longer matched the person who had stormed out hours ago. When we finally sat down, the clock had crept past midnight. Elaine clutched a mug of chamomile tea like a lifeline. I just stared out the window. Do you think she meant it? She asked quietly. About not letting us see Lily and Max? I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know, but because I knew too well. She's done it before, I said finally. After the Christmas argument, remember? 2 weeks. No calls, no photos. Not even a video of Lily's school recital. Elaine flinched at the memory. She's their mother, I added. If she wants to cut us off from them, she can. And she knows exactly how much that would hurt us. The next morning it happened. My phone buzzed at 9:17. A message from an unfamiliar number, but the tone was unmistakable. Dad, I hope you're happy. The kids need school clothes and coats, but I guess your savings matter more than their comfort. Don't expect to see them anytime soon. I showed the message to Elaine. She didn't cry. Her grief had moved past tears. She really did it, she said softly. She's using them, like bargaining chips. I nodded, jaw tight. And she's using language that makes me sound like the villain. The shift had happened so gradually. Sophia used to call for help with warmth in her voice, at least a trace of gratitude. But that had faded long ago. Now it was obligation, entitlement. And when money didn't flow freely, the retaliation was swift. David, Elaine began, cautious. Maybe we should number... I said it before she could finish. No more maybes. No more reconsidering. I stood and walked to the mantel again, facing the photo like it might offer answers. I won't teach our grandchildren that love is a transaction, that you can threaten people into generosity. She'll just see it as punishment, Elaine said. She'll play the victim. She already is, I replied. In her mind, I'm the one who failed her. Elaine looked down into her tea. She didn't argue, because there was nothing left to argue. We'd watched this unfold for years and kept telling ourselves it was temporary, that a new job or a good month would turn things around, that a fresh start would change Sophia's outlook. But it never did. It always circled back to one thing: money. That afternoon, the world outside moved on, blissfully unaware. The Hendersons went for a walk with their dog. Mrs. Patterson watered her roses. Elaine folded laundry. I tried to read the Sunday paper, but every sentence blurred with distraction. I kept hearing her words. You'll regret this. You'll be old, sick, and alone. The voice that once asked for bedtime stories now warned of abandonment. At 4:42 p.m., a brown UPS truck pulled into our driveway. I wasn't expecting anything. We hadn't ordered anything. The driver stepped out, confirmed my name, and handed me a medium-sized box. Happy Father's Day, he said, smiling. Someone paid extra for weekend delivery. Must really love you. The moment he walked away, I knew something was wrong. The box was too light, too deliberate. I carried it inside, setting it on the coffee table. Elaine emerged from the kitchen and eyed it with suspicion. Who's it from? No label, no sender. She stepped closer, then froze. David, she said, her voice trembling. Don't open it. I blinked. What are you talking about? She pointed. The holes. Look closely. I did. Small, round punctures lined the sides, almost invisible, unless you knew to look. Those are for breathing, she whispered. That means something's alive in there. My stomach dropped. The air in the room shifted again, the way it had when Sophia walked out. Cold, heavy, malevolent. Who would send us something alive? Elaine asked, though we both knew the answer. I didn't want to say it. Saying it made it real. It's her, I said anyway. It has to be. The box rustled, a soft sound, like something adjusting inside. Then it hissed. Not a recording, not a prank toy. A living, breathing hiss. Elaine grabbed my arm. Call someone. My hands trembled as I dialed 911. I gave them the details. No label, no return address, breathing holes, audible hissing. Sir, please stay 6 feet back from the package, the dispatcher said. Do not touch or move it. Officers will arrive within 10 minutes. Should we leave the house? I asked. Number? Stay inside, but keep your distance. Help is on the way. We waited. Neither of us sat down. Neither of us spoke. The rustling continued, subtle at first, then more insistent. At one point, the box jerked slightly. That's when Elaine lost color in her face. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. The idea that my daughter had sent something dangerous, something alive to my home, was no longer speculation. It was happening. A knock at the door broke the tension. I opened it to find Officer Todd Reeves, tall, alert, already slipping on latex gloves. Mr. Martin? Yes. The box is inside. He followed me in, glanced at the package, and gave a slow nod. Breathing holes? You said it hissed? Yes, Elaine said. More than once. Sounds like a snake, he said calmly. Probably non-venomous, but we'll let animal control handle it, just in case. He radioed in the request. 20 minutes later, another vehicle arrived, a white van labeled County Wildlife Services. A man named Mike Johnson extracted the creature with impressive ease. A 3-foot corn snake, pale orange and white. Beautiful specimen, he said, locking it into a carrier. Someone paid good money for this. He gave us a polite nod and disappeared into the evening. Officer Reeves lingered. Any idea who sent it? I hesitated. Elaine looked at me, then down at the floor. Probably a prank, I said. From someone who knows us, knew we'd be home today. He watched me carefully. That's a very specific prank. He didn't press, just left his card and advised us to be cautious. When they were gone, Elaine collapsed onto the sofa. I stood in the same spot for a long time. My hands were still shaking. I couldn't escape one terrible realization. My daughter had escalated. This wasn't just manipulation anymore. This was a message, a warning, a power play. The hissing hadn't come from a reptile. It had come from betrayal, and it wasn't going away. The house felt different after they left. Not just quiet, violated, as though the presence of that snake, confined in its box but so alive, had infected the very air we breathed. Elaine busied herself in the kitchen, though I could see she was just moving dishes for the sake of movement. Her mind was spinning, just like mine. I stayed in the living room, staring at the coffee table where the box had sat. The watermarks from where Officer Johnson disinfected the wood were still faintly visible. I could trace them with my fingers like scars. The inheritance documents had been restacked neatly on the side, but they no longer felt like plans for a loving future. They felt like the trigger that started a war. I walked slowly to my office, my steps deliberate, my heartbeat oddly steady. Rage wasn't what I felt, not even betrayal, though that word hovered nearby. What I felt was finality. A door had closed, something had snapped into place, and I realized that everything I'd allowed, every check written, every excuse made, every lie I'd pretended not to see had led us here. My desk, usually cluttered with bills and receipts, suddenly looked surgical, precise, like a command center. I opened the drawer on the right. Inside were bank statements, years of them. Each one told a story. $800 for rent, $312 for Sophia's car insurance, $65 for a gym membership she once told me was essential for her mental health. Thousands more labeled emergency, urgent, or one time only. I pulled up my online banking portal and logged in. My fingers moved without hesitation. First, the credit card. Sophia was listed as an authorized user, something I'd set up when she was in college, just in case. That case had lasted 20 years. The charge from Reptile Palace was there, dated 3 weeks ago, for $112.90. I had assumed it was for Lily or Max, a toy, something harmless, not a reptile, not this. I clicked on Manage Users. The screen asked me to confirm, remove Sophia Martin as an authorized user? I didn't hesitate. Yes. The screen refreshed. Changes will take effect within 1 business hour. Next came the recurring payments. I canceled the monthly transfer to her checking account. I stopped the automatic car insurance payment. I deleted the $19.99 gym charge. Then I changed the PIN codes on every account. New numbers this time, not ones Sophia might remember from birthdays or anniversaries. I chose something meaningful only to me and Elaine. The year we met, the year we married, the year we paid off the house. Each update clicked into place like the locking of a vault. By the time I finished, nearly an hour had passed. I sat back, breathing evenly. No guilt, no doubt, just peace. For the first time in decades, I'd done something not out of guilt or obligation, but out of resolve. Elaine appeared in the doorway, holding 2 cups of tea. She paused when she saw the screen. "You did it?" she asked softly. I nodded. She said nothing more, just placed the mug beside me and walked away. That night, we didn't speak much. We didn't need to. Our shared silence was no longer strained, it was agreement. A new chapter had started, even if it came at a cost. At 8:15 the next morning, the phone rang. I didn't need to look at the caller ID. I let it ring 3 times before I answered. "Good morning, Sophia," I said, my tone even. "Dad, what did you do?" Her voice came in hot and fast, already high-pitched with panic. "I tried to buy groceries and my card was declined. The car insurance bounced. What's going on?" I sipped my coffee before answering. "Sophia, I know you sent that snake. Silence. Just the faint sound of her breath quickening. What are you talking about? She asked, but the performance was hollow, and then in the background I heard it, a low chuckle. Tyler. Not the kind of surprised laughter someone gives when they hear something unexpected. No, this was the smug, satisfied snicker of someone who thinks they got away with it. My grip tightened on the mug. Just a delivery mix-up, I said. Nothing important. Are you sure you're okay? She asked, her voice dipping into fake concern. You sound strange. Everything's fine, Sophia. Enjoy your Monday. I ended the call before she could respond. The phone stayed in my hand a moment longer than necessary. I stared at the blank screen, processing the confirmation I'd been handed. I didn't need a confession. I had the truth already. Elaine joined me moments later. She read my face instantly. She laughed? No, I said. Tyler did. She nodded, quiet. What are you going to do now? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I stood and walked to my office again. The desk was still open, the cursor blinking on the screen. The damage had already been undone, the payments canceled. But now something more permanent had to be put in motion. I'm going to teach her about consequences, I said, almost to myself. At 7 p.m. That evening, I sat in the same chair, the lights low, the house quiet. On my desk was the leather portfolio containing decades of financial records, every favor, every bailout, every quiet rescue. Checks for her wedding. A sale of my 1,968 Pontiac GTO to cover a $6,000 gambling loss. Monthly rent paid without fail. Tuition covered. Emergencies that came like clockwork, each one more dire than the last. They weren't emergencies. They were routines. And I had enabled every one of them. I opened my will and reviewed the language. Sophia was set to receive nearly everything outside of what would pass to Elaine. Our estate, retirement accounts, life insurance. But she had made it clear she wasn't waiting for someday. She wanted it now. And when she couldn't get it through guilt, she tried fear. I wasn't afraid anymore. I called Rachel Ellis, our family attorney, and left a message requesting a meeting for the next morning. I wanted to make changes to the will, urgent ones. I wanted to protect what remained from her, from Tyler, from whatever threat came next. I wanted to protect my wife, and I wanted to protect our grandchildren, the only innocents left in the middle of this ugly storm. When I stood from the desk, my body felt 10 pounds lighter. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Sophia. Dad, if you don't fix this by tomorrow, I swear I'll make sure you never see Lily or Max again. I'm not playing anymore. I didn't respond. I didn't even flinch. There was nothing left to play. The game was over. Now came the rules. Tomorrow, I would redraw the lines, and this time, they would be written in ink. Rachel Ellis's office occupied the third floor of a quiet, dignified granite building downtown, tucked between a notary and an insurance agency that had probably been there since the Reagan years. Everything about the place suggested permanence. Thick carpets, deep wood tones, bookcases lined with worn legal volumes. It was a place where things got finalized, cleanly, professionally, without drama. The kind of place I should have walked into years ago. I arrived 10 minutes early, leather folder tucked under my arm like a shield. Rachel greeted me warmly, her voice just the right blend of compassionate and businesslike. We'd worked with her on our wills when Elaine's mother passed. She knew our family history in broad strokes, but today I was going to fill in the painful details. David, she said, removing her glasses and folding her hands, when you called, you mentioned needing to make urgent changes. Do you want to start by telling me what's going on? I exhaled slowly. It's about my daughter, Sophia. And so I told her. About the fight on Father's Day. About the snake in the box. About the years of financial support that had twisted into dependence, then resentment, then cruelty. About Tyler and the threats. About the grandchildren being weaponized like bargaining chips. Rachel didn't interrupt. She listened with the patience of someone who had heard variations of this story before, but perhaps never one quite like mine. When I finished, her expression had shifted into something sharper, protective, focused. David, she said, her tone firm, what you're describing isn't just family tension, it's harassment. possibly even endangerment, sending a live animal with the intent to cause fear that could fall under criminal threat statutes, depending on how it's interpreted. I'm not looking to press charges, I said quickly. At least, not yet. I just want to be protected. I want Elaine to be protected. And I want what's left of our resources to be used wisely, not wasted on enabling behavior that's only gotten worse. Rachel nodded and opened a clean legal pad. Let's start with your will. We began outlining the changes. I told her I wanted Sophia removed entirely as a direct beneficiary. Instead, I wanted to create an educational trust fund for Lily and Max. Something airtight. No backdoors. No discretionary access. You'll need a third-party trustee, Rachel explained. Someone neutral. I can help you appoint someone from the firm who's managed these before. They'll have full authority to disperse funds for things like tuition, school supplies, medical needs. But Sophia and Tyler won't be able to touch a cent. I nodded. Good. That's exactly what I want. What about your home? Retirement savings? Insurance? Elaine gets everything, I said. She's always been the priority. That doesn't change. Rachel made careful notes. And you mentioned threats, she added. We can file for a restraining order today. We'll document everything, the snake incident, the texts, the confrontation at your front door. The goal is clear boundaries, no contact unless initiated through legal counsel. Any violation becomes a police matter. That's what I want, I said quietly. I want the escalation to stop here. We'll also include a cease and desist regarding any threats related to the grandchildren, Rachel added. Even implied ones. If she uses them as leverage again, she's violating the order. I felt something ease inside my chest, a knot that had been coiled tight for months, maybe years. The law wasn't just theory anymore. It was armor. Rachel stood and pulled a thick stack of preliminary forms from her printer. My assistant will prepare the final will draft and the trust documentation by Friday. The restraining order can be submitted to the court today. Once it's granted, officers will serve both Sophia and Tyler. I signed every page without hesitation. At the end of it, she stood and extended her hand. You're doing the right thing, David. Love doesn't mean tolerating abuse. I used to think it did, I admitted. I thought love meant always being available, always picking up the pieces. Sometimes, she said, love means knowing when to stop. I left her office with the signed papers tucked safely in my folder. Outside, the city continued on around me, cars, foot traffic, the distant wail of a siren. Life, undisturbed. I got home just after 1. Elaine met me at the door, her eyes full of unspoken questions. I gave her a brief nod. It's done, I said. All of it. We didn't celebrate. There was no joy in closing a door on your own child, even when it was necessary. But there was relief. Later that evening, we sat in the kitchen, the same place where we had planned our retirement, worried about tuition bills, dreamed about traveling once the mortgage was paid off. Now we sat in silence, letting the decision settle around us. Do you think she'll fight it? Elaine asked eventually. Try to undo the trust or contest the will? She can try, I said. But Rachel's building something ironclad. She won't get through it. And the restraining order? Should be served tomorrow. After that, any contact is a legal issue. Elaine looked down into her tea, then back up at me. We really lost her, didn't we? We lost her a long time ago, I said softly. We just didn't want to admit it. The memory of that little girl drawing crayon pictures of our family came back to me, as vivid as if it had been yesterday. I didn't know when she'd stopped being that child. I just knew the woman who sent me a snake had no interest in being a daughter anymore. The next day passed in stillness. No calls. No knocks. No frantic messages. In the afternoon, Rachel called. It's done, she said. Both Sophia and Tyler were served at 2:15 p.m. They've also received official notice of the will changes. If they try to contact you directly, document it. Otherwise, enjoy your peace. I thanked her and sat for a long while in my study. I watched the wind rustle the trees outside the window. Somewhere across town, my daughter was reading legal papers that spelled out her new reality. No inheritance, no credit line, no more threats, no access to the grandchildren's trust. The safety net was gone. And maybe, just maybe, that was what she'd needed all along. Elaine entered the room quietly, resting her hand on my shoulder. She knows? She knows. Do you think she understands what she's lost? I thought about it. Not yet, but she will. And if she tries to push back? I looked at the signed copy of the restraining order on my desk. Then it becomes the court's problem, not ours. For the first time in over 30 years, I didn't feel responsible for Sophia's crisis. I didn't feel like I had to fix it. I didn't feel like I owed her anything. I had loved her, sacrificed for her, protected her from consequences again and again. But now, the protection had shifted to Elaine, to our marriage, to the part of our lives that was still worth safeguarding. Sophia had made her choices, and now, finally, we had made ours. The next 48 hours passed in a kind of peace that didn't feel real at first. It was the kind of quiet that made you suspicious, like the stillness after a heavy snowfall, where the world feels muffled, but something deeper is waiting underneath. Elaine and I moved through our days cautiously, careful not to disturb it. We drank coffee on the porch. We folded laundry without mentioning her name. We made dinner while the evening news played in the background, offering distractions we didn't need but welcomed anyway. It was the closest we'd felt to normal in years. And then, Thursday afternoon, the final call came not from Sophia but from Rachel Ellis. "David," she said, her voice crisp but kind. "The documents were delivered at 2:15 p.m. Both Sophia and Tyler were served. They've received official copies of the will modification, the trust fund structure, and the restraining order." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. "Thank you, Rachel, for everything. You've done the hard part," she said. "Now the law will handle the rest." I sat alone for several minutes after we ended the call, just staring out the front window as Mrs. Patterson planted her spring flowers, and the Henderson kids pedaled their bikes in looping figure eights down the sidewalk. Everything looked the same, but everything had changed. Elaine stepped into the doorway. "Was that her?" "Rachel," I said. "It's done, all of it." She sat beside me without a word. We didn't discuss what Sophia might be feeling, or whether she would lash out. We didn't speculate on whether she would try to manipulate the system or send more threats. We didn't have to. The protections were in place. And for the first time in decades, we weren't at her mercy. We were free. I thought about Lily and Max, how they would grow up without ever knowing just how close their mother had come to tying their future to her rage. They would receive everything they needed for school, for college, for a better life, but they'd receive it through a structure that couldn't be twisted or stolen. Rachel had built the walls. Sophia would never climb them. Elaine reached for my hand. "Do you think she realizes what she's lost?" "She will," I said. "Eventually." I could almost imagine the scene, Sophia tearing through the envelope, reading the cold legal language, and realizing she was no longer mentioned by name as a beneficiary, that there was no money, no fallback plan, no leverage. I imagined Tyler, his face turning red, muttering that they'd find a way around it, that they'd fight it. But the signatures were final. The terms were set. There was no longer a place at the table for threats. And that was the thing she had never understood. Inheritance was never an entitlement. It was a gift, and she'd broken it. Not with one outburst, not with one mistake, but with a lifetime of calculated decisions to see me as a wallet rather than a father. She'd reduced love to a transaction. And now the ledger was closed. That evening, Elaine and I stood in the kitchen making dinner roasted chicken and garlic potatoes, the kind of meal we used to save for Sundays. We weren't celebrating. We were just reclaiming space, one routine at a time. "She used to draw pictures of us," Elaine said softly, washing carrots at the sink. "Stick figures, hearts. I still have some of them." "In the box upstairs," I said. "In the closet. I don't know how we got here." Her voice cracked. How that sweet little girl became someone who'd send a snake to her own father. I didn't answer right away. I took the carrots from her, sliced them carefully, one by one. "She didn't become that overnight," I said. "It happened by inches. Every time we said yes when we should have said no. Every time we bailed her out instead of letting her fall. We thought we were protecting her. We were. But sometimes protection looks a lot like permission." Elaine leaned against the counter, staring into the sink. "I keep wondering if there's still a version of her somewhere deep down that's capable of love, of remorse." I turned toward her. There might be, I said gently, but it's not our job to go digging for it anymore. That's her work now. Elaine's eyes filled with tears, not the kind that came from sadness alone, but from release. Grief for a daughter we'd lost slowly, year by year. Grief for all the time we'd spent hoping. And if she calls, she asked, if she finds some way to reach out again, then we don't answer. Or we let Rachel's office handle it. The line between us and her now has legal teeth. We're not her targets anymore. And the kids? They're protected. The trust is built so that even if Sophia tries to manipulate them, she won't be able to touch their future. We've secured that. I hate that it's come to this. So do I. We sat down to eat in a dining room that had hosted decades of birthdays, holidays, messy art projects, and candlelit dinners. For years, I'd imagined passing that space down along with the house, the assets, the legacy. But you don't pass down your life to someone who's already made it clear they only want what you can give, not who you are. When we finished eating, I cleared the plates. Elaine wiped the table, slower than usual. You know, she said after a while, I think I'm finally starting to believe it, that it's really over. It is, I said. And tomorrow we'll wake up, and there won't be any messages. No sudden emergencies. No surprise visits. Just us. Just our life. That night, we didn't check our phones. We didn't leave a porch light on, or peek out the window when we heard a car pass. We didn't wait for the next threat to come through the cracks. Instead, we went to bed early. The kind of early you only allow yourself when the weight has lifted. And before the lights went out, Elaine turned to me. You didn't lose her, you know. I looked over. Didn't I? No, she said. She lost you. And for the first time in years, I believed it. Not because I stopped loving my daughter, but because I'd finally learned that love isn't just about holding on. Sometimes, real love means letting go. The morning after felt almost surreal in its simplicity. Elaine brewed coffee while sunlight filtered through the kitchen window, painting golden stripes across the countertop and the tops of our mugs. I sat at the table, the newspaper unopened beside me, my thoughts quiet for the first time in weeks. No buzzing phone, no guilt lingering in my chest like a stone, no anxiety over what crisis Sophia might conjure next. Just peace foreign, but welcome. Elaine moved about the kitchen with practiced ease, refilling my cup without asking, humming faintly as she adjusted the herb pots on the windowsill. It was the kind of mundane domestic rhythm we'd once taken for granted. Now it felt sacred. When the phone finally did ring at precisely 8:15 a.m., I didn't flinch. I already knew who it would be. I let it buzz 3 times, then answered calmly. Good morning, Sophia. Her voice came through sharp and frantic, her composure already cracking. Dad, what the hell did you do? My card isn't working. I went to pay for groceries, and it was declined in front of everyone. The car insurance didn't go through. The rent payment bounced. What's going on? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even sigh. I simply took a sip of coffee and said, Sophia, I know you sent that snake. There was a silence, not of surprise, but of calculation. She was weighing her response, trying to find the most effective angle. You've lost your mind, she said at last, but her tone lacked conviction. How could you even say something like that to your own daughter? I leaned back in my chair. Because when I asked you about it the other day, you didn't deny it. You asked if I was okay, and Tyler laughed in the background. You made it very clear without even trying that it came from you. Her tone shifted instantly. So what? You're punishing me? You're cutting me off financially over a prank? One harmless little prank? There it was. Not even a proper denial anymore. Just a soft admission dressed in dismissiveness. A live animal in a sealed box is not a prank, Sophia, I said, voice steady. It's a threat, and you knew exactly what you were doing when you sent it. It wasn't dangerous, she snapped. It was just a corn snake. It doesn't even bite. It was never about the bite, I replied. It was about fear, about control, and about how far you were willing to go to get what you wanted. Her voice dropped to a low, simmering anger. You think you've won something here? That this makes you righteous? Cutting off your daughter? Embarrassing me in public when I can't pay for basic necessities? I closed the newspaper slowly, still calm. Sophia, your basic necessities haven't been your responsibility in years. I've paid your rent, Your car, your bills. I've bailed you out of debt and lied to myself that I was helping. But what I was really doing was enabling you to keep falling. So now what? She demanded. You're just done? After everything I've been through, you're washing your hands of me? No, I said. I'm giving you the chance to stand on your own. The opportunity I should have insisted on years ago. She switched tactics, as I knew she would. You're heartless. And don't think Lily and Max won't hear about this someday. I'll make sure they know how their grandfather chose money over family. The old me would have cracked at that at the mere suggestion of losing my grandchildren. But not anymore. You've used them as weapons for too long, I said. Threatened to keep them from us every time things didn't go your way. But not this time, because this time they're protected just like Elaine and I are. They'll still get everything they need. Education, healthcare, stability. Just not through you. Oh. Her breath caught. What does that mean? It means the inheritance is gone, Sophia. You're no longer listed in the will. The money goes directly to a trust for Lily and Max. Managed by people who can't be manipulated, you have no access to it. Ever. The pause was long and heavy. Then came the explosion. You selfish old bastard. You think this is over? You think you can cut me out and sleep peacefully at night? This isn't over. You've declared war on your own daughter. Oh. No, I said gently. You did that when you turned parenthood into a transaction. She screamed something incoherent and ended the call. I set the phone down with a kind of serenity I couldn't have imagined even a week ago. Elaine stood in the doorway, having heard every word. She's coming, she said softly. You know she is. I nodded, probably with Tyler. Are you ready for that? I thought about it, then nodded again. Yes, I am. When the sound of the car screeching into the driveway came 20 minutes later, we were already braced for it. The slamming of doors, the aggressive knock, the second louder knock when we didn't answer fast enough. I rose from my chair, motioned for Elaine to stay back. We're in this together, she said quietly, stepping beside me. I opened the door. Sophia and Tyler stood on the porch, fury radiating off them like heat. Her hair was unbrushed, her eyes bloodshot. He looked like he hadn't slept. What the hell do you think you're doing? She barked before I could even speak. You're cutting me out? You're freezing our accounts? You think that's going to solve anything? It's not meant to solve anything, I said. It's meant to end something. Tyler stepped forward, puffing up. You think you're smart, old man? You think you're going to get away with this? We know your schedule. We know when you're home. You might want to reconsider before things get ugly. Elaine flinched, but I didn't move. That's a threat, I said calmly. And now, with the restraining order, that's also a crime. You're already on thin ice. One more step, and it won't be a family matter, it'll be law enforcement. Sophia hissed, You'll regret this. You'll die alone, and we won't even come to the funeral. I hope you don't, I said, not unkindly, because I want peace on that day. She looked stunned for a moment, like the poison hadn't worked this time, and she didn't know what to do without it. Tyler sneered and turned away. Come on, he spat. He's not worth it. She stood frozen for a moment longer, then turned, stormed down the steps, and slammed the car door so hard the glass shook. They peeled out of the driveway without another word. I stood in the doorway, watching the taillights disappear. When I finally turned to Elaine, her expression wasn't fear. It was something quieter. Sadness, maybe, but also something else. We're going to need legal advice, she said. I nodded. Already got it. The house behind us was silent, but this time, the silence didn't feel dangerous. It felt earned. That night, the house felt still in a way that was no longer eerie, but deliberate, like it had exhaled for the first time in years. Elaine and I sat at the kitchen table, the dinner dishes cleared, her tea cooling beside her, my second cup of coffee going untouched. The routine comfort of our nightly rhythms settled between us like a warm blanket. We weren't speaking much, but the quiet wasn't tense anymore. It was contemplative. We were both thinking the same thing, even if we hadn't said it aloud yet. The war was over, or at least it had shifted battlegrounds from emotional to legal, from guilt to protection. I studied Elaine's face across the table. 34 years of marriage had taught me how to read her like weather. The tightening at the corners of her mouth, the downward tilt of her eyes, the restless movement of her fingers around the rim of her mug. She wasn't angry, she was grieving. "I keep thinking about when she was 8, she said suddenly, not lifting her eyes. "Mother's Day. She woke us up with burned toast and orange juice filled with pulp. Remember?" I smiled faintly. She was wearing that pink pajama set with the unicorns, stood on a kitchen stool just to reach the toaster. "She was so proud," Elaine whispered, "like she'd made us a feast." I remembered. I remembered every detail. The sticky jam that got on the bed sheets, the crayon drawing that said "Best Mom and Dad Ever," her gap-toothed smile, the hug that nearly knocked my coffee over. That memory used to be enough to eclipse the rest. Now, it just made the distance feel larger. "She used to draw pictures of us," I said. "Stick figures, always holding hands." Elaine nodded. "I kept some of them, in the memory box upstairs." There was a pause. I knew what was coming. The question I'd expected her to ask since the moment I walked out of Rachel's office with a sealed folder and a dozen legal signatures. "David, she's still our daughter." The words weren't accusatory. They weren't meant to provoke. They were the words of a mother still holding a fragile thread of hope, even after the line had been cut. I let out a long breath, steepling my hands in front of me. "I know," I said gently, "but she's also the person who sent a live snake to our home, the person who used her children as leverage, the person who showed up here and tried to intimidate us into giving her money. I don't say this lightly, Elaine, but love isn't supposed to feel like blackmail." "I just keep wondering," she said, "if we'd done something differently, earlier, if we had set firmer boundaries when she was in her 20s. Maybe she wouldn't have become this," I finished for her. She nodded slowly, as if saying it herself would make it too real. "Maybe," I agreed. "Or maybe this was always going to be who she became, and we just took longer to see it because we kept covering for her. We kept giving, and she kept learning that the consequences never came." Elaine looked down into her mug. "What are you going to do next?" I stood, walked to the cabinet, and pulled out the envelope Rachel had given me. I sat back down and laid it between us. "Something permanent," I said. "Something that makes sure this never happens again." Elaine traced the edge of the envelope with her fingertip. "You're talking about changing the estate plan." I nodded. "Not just changing it, locking it down. Irrevocable trust. Ironclad protections. No room for challenge." Her voice was barely audible. "That's going to break her." "She broke it, Elaine. We're just acknowledging it." She sat in silence for a long time. I didn't push her. I knew what this meant for her. For a mother, removing a child from a will is more than a financial decision. It's a moral reckoning. It's a declaration that the child she raised, protected, sacrificed for, no longer belongs in the future she imagined. When she finally spoke, her voice was steadier than I expected. "What about Lily and Max?" I softened. "They'll be provided for, completely. The trust will cover school, college, tutors, whatever they need. Rachel's handling it. Sophia and Tyler won't be able to touch a penny." She nodded. "Good. They shouldn't have to pay for their mother's choices." I reached across the table and took her hand. "That's all this is," I said. "It's not revenge. It's protection. For us, for them, for what's left." "Oh," Elaine's hand tightened around mine, and I felt a familiar shift. The same quiet strength that had carried us through layoffs, medical scares, mortgage payments, and years of parenting. She wasn't just mourning tonight, she was letting go of guilt, of illusions, of a relationship that had long since mutated into something toxic. "And what happens if Sophia finds out?" she asked. "When she finds out," I corrected. "She will, but by then the legal protections will be in place. She won't be able to challenge them. And even if she tries, it won't be our problem. Rachel will handle it." Elaine leaned back, eyes closed for a long moment. "I hate that this is what it's come to," she said. "So do I." I stood and cleared our cups, rinsing them in the sink. Outside the window, the streetlights blinked on in sequence. A dog barked down the block. Somewhere, a television played a sitcom laugh track. Normal life, still humming along. I turned back to her. "But I won't spend what's left of our lives living in fear of our own daughter. I won't keep flinching every time the phone rings. I won't let her turn us into financial hostages. Elaine rose and joined me at the sink, standing close enough that our arms touched. When will you do it? She asked. Tomorrow, I said. I'll call Rachel in the morning. She said she can have everything finalized within a week. Elaine rested her head lightly on my shoulder. Then let's do it, she said quietly. Let's put up the walls. Let's protect what we've built. I nodded, the weight of her words settling over me, not heavy, but solid. Anchoring, the end of a long chapter, the beginning of something sturdier. And if she shows up again, she asked, if she knocks on the door and cries and says she's sorry? I looked at her, then toward the hallway where the unopened memory box sat tucked away upstairs. Then we don't open the door, I said, because we're not protecting her anymore, Elaine. We're protecting ourselves. That night, for the first time in a long time, we didn't talk about Sophia after lights out. We didn't stay awake running through what-ifs. We simply lay beside each other in the dark, the fan humming softly, our breathing in sync. No shadows on the ceiling, no dread in our bones, just rest. It was a small kind of peace, but it was real, and it was enough. The next morning, I made the call just after 9 a.m. Rachel answered on the second ring, her voice professional but warm, always the same, even in difficult matters, which was probably why I trusted her with something this delicate. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I'm ready, I said. Let's finalize everything, the trust, the estate plan, the clause about contesting the will. I want it all airtight. She didn't hesitate. Understood. I've already started drafting the revisions. I'll need you to come in this afternoon to sign. Once it's filed, it becomes binding. Today works. Bring any documentation or notes you want included. And David, you're doing the right thing. It may not feel like it right now, but this is the most loving boundary you can set. After we hung up, I sat at my desk for a moment, letting her words settle. The room around me, once the command center for bailing Sophia out of every manufactured crisis, now felt like a place of clarity. I opened the top drawer and pulled out the manila folder that had grown thicker over the years. Statements, canceled checks, printed receipts from emergency wire transfers that had never been repaid. Each one told the same story: our daughter in trouble, us rushing in. And every time we did, we buried the lesson a little deeper. I flipped through the papers one last time. The check for her wedding dress. The transfer to clear her credit card debt after Tyler lost his job. The car down payment. The tuition we'd paid for a degree she never finished. And finally, the receipts for smaller things, gym memberships, beauty subscriptions, grocery bills she claimed were just temporary. All of it added up to one sobering reality. We hadn't been parents for a long time. We'd been a safety net, a lifeline, a silent source of guilt-fueled generosity. I tucked the folder under my arm and left for Rachel's office. The sun was bright when I stepped outside, as if the universe hadn't gotten the memo that today was, in many ways, a funeral. Not for Sophia, but for the version of our relationship I'd held onto for too long. When I arrived, Rachel met me with the documents already arranged on her desk. Her assistant offered me coffee. I declined. I didn't want to feel comfortable. I wanted to feel the weight of what I was doing. Rachel walked me through each section slowly, allowing the finality of the words to land. The trust for Lily and Max is fully secured, she said. It's managed by an independent fiduciary with no personal connection to your daughter or son-in-law. The funds are restricted to educational expenses, medical costs, and life-building resources. Sophia and Tyler will have no legal path to access or redirect the money, no matter their relationship with the children. I nodded. That was non-negotiable. The estate language has been updated to reflect the removal of Sophia Martin as a beneficiary. The clause is absolute. If she attempts to contest the will in any form, she automatically forfeits any claim to remaining assets, even if future revisions are made. Again, I nodded. It was harsh, but not nearly as harsh as what we'd been through. Rachel continued, her tone more cautious now. The restraining order is already active, but we'll be supplementing it with an affidavit that outlines the escalation pattern, financial manipulation, intimidation, and the use of minors as leverage. If she violates any aspect, we can pursue criminal penalties. I signed my name on each page, deliberately, carefully, as if etching a new set of laws into our lives. And in some ways, I was. These were no longer just estate planning documents. They were boundaries, shields, quiet declarations that we were done being held hostage by obligation. When it was over, Rachel gathered the documents and looked at me with something like respect. "Most parents don't have the strength to do what you just did," she said. "They let the fear of being unloved outweigh the damage of being used." "I've been afraid for years," I admitted. Afraid of losing her, afraid of saying no, afraid of what she might do. But then she sent a snake to my front door, and I realized I was already lost to her. I was just a wallet with a heartbeat. Rachel didn't argue, she just nodded. "You've taken back control, David, and that's a powerful thing." I left her office with the folder tucked under my arm like a shield, feeling not triumphant but solid, like I had stepped out of quicksand and finally found ground. At home, Elaine was waiting on the porch, a blanket over her lap, a half-read book beside her. I handed her the folder and kissed her forehead. "It's done," I said. She didn't need to open it. She just nodded, eyes closing in quiet gratitude. "Do you think she knows yet?" she asked. Rachel said they were served. They've seen it. And? No contact. Not a word. That should have frightened me. But it didn't. Because for once, silence didn't mean suspense. It meant distance. It meant boundaries that were working. That evening, as we cleaned up from dinner, Elaine moved with more ease than I'd seen in months. She hummed as she wiped the counters, her movements unhurried, almost peaceful. I sat at the kitchen table, looking out the window at the familiar shapes of our neighborhood. Mrs. Patterson walking her dog, the Hendersons grilling out back. It looked like a painting of ordinary life. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like we belonged to it again. "I keep thinking about the last time we felt this calm," Elaine said. "Before the wedding? Maybe before Max was born?" I thought about it. Maybe before Sophia moved in with Tyler. "That long ago," she whispered. "We lived under the weight of her choices for so long. I forgot what it felt like to just live." "We're remembering now," I said, "and from here on out, we protect that peace. What happens if she tries to challenge it? Then she deals with the consequences, not us." The sun set slowly, casting warm light across the kitchen as we sat together in the quiet. There were no apologies from Sophia, no requests, no new lies, just the absence of chaos. And in that silence, we found something more powerful than reconciliation relief. Tomorrow, we'd wake up in a house no longer defined by crisis. No longer waiting for the next call, the next manipulation, the next financial demand cloaked in guilt. Tomorrow, we'd wake up with nothing to fix and no one to rescue, just each other. And that, after everything, was more than enough. 2 more days passed, and in that span of quiet, something profound took root, not just the absence of Sophia's voice or Tyler's threats, but the presence of stillness that no longer felt foreign. Elaine and I eased into it, not with celebration, but with cautious gratitude, like survivors emerging from a long storm. We took walks after dinner. She replanted her herb garden, and I finally cleaned the garage like I'd been meaning to for 3 years. There was no fanfare, no dramatic realization, just the slow return of autonomy, the kind that had been missing every time we picked up the phone with a knot in our stomachs or checked the mail expecting another crisis wrapped in guilt. On Thursday afternoon, Rachel called one final time. "David," she said, "the last of the documents have been processed. Everything's been filed, recorded, and sealed. You're fully protected financially, legally, and structurally. Your estate plan is no longer vulnerable." I closed my eyes for a moment, just breathing. "Thank you, Rachel. Truly." "You're welcome," she said. "I hope you never need to call me for this reason again." "God willing," I replied. When I hung up, I didn't rush to tell Elaine. I let the moment breathe. Outside our window, the world was still turning, kids riding bikes, dogs barking, sprinklers ticking rhythmically across freshly mowed lawns. Normal life. Not the kind that was feigned between family disasters, but the kind we used to believe belonged to other people. Now, somehow, it belonged to us, again. A few minutes later, Elaine entered the room and read my face the way only she could. "It's finished?" she asked. I nodded. "Completely." She sat beside me and reached for my hand. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. There was nothing left to unravel, nothing left to defend. The future we were protecting was finally ours. I thought, briefly, about Sophia, about how she might be reacting, whether she was angry, stunned, playing the victim, whether Tyler was pacing their apartment, ranting about injustice and betrayal, plotting another way to manipulate the situation. But the thought passed through me like a gust of wind, noticeable but powerless. Because now their reactions had no weight. Their access had been severed, not just from our accounts, but from our peace. The boundary wasn't emotional anymore. It was legal. It was final. And for the first time in 30 years, I wasn't afraid of what they might do. I was tired of fear, tired of apologies, tired of pretending that loving someone meant tolerating everything they did. The daughter I had raised, the one who wore unicorn pajamas and made us burnt toast, had been gone for a long time. I just hadn't let myself believe it. Not until the snake arrived. That box had done more than rattle. It had awakened something in me. A line I didn't even know I had was finally crossed. Sophia's silence since the restraining order was telling. There had been no dramatic plea, no apology, not even a denial, just absence. And that, in a way, was its own admission. She knew what she'd done. She just never believed there would be consequences. But that's what boundaries do. They replace chaos with consequence. They stop the bleeding. They say, this far and no further. That night, as we got ready for bed, Elaine pulled the memory box down from the closet. She opened it gently, like it contained a wounded animal. Inside were drawings, old report cards, a ballet slipper from Sophia's first recital, even the tiny paper crown from her kindergarten birthday party. Elaine ran her fingers across each one like she was saying goodbye, not just to the objects, but to the hope they once held. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. Grief, when it settles long enough, hardens into acceptance. I don't think she'll come back, Elaine said softly. Not really. Probably not, I agreed. And if she does, it won't be the same. She looked up at me. Would you let her in? I thought about it, really thought about it. Maybe, I said, but only if she comes with honesty. Not excuses, not demands, not shame dressed up as suffering. The door's closed, not locked. But it doesn't open for just anyone anymore. Elaine nodded, and I could see she understood. She replaced the box, shut the closet door, and turned out the light. As we lay in bed, the ceiling fan clicking softly overhead, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Safety. Not because nothing bad could ever happen again, but because for once we'd built walls high enough to keep what mattered in and what harmed us out. I reached over and took her hand. She squeezed it gently. Outside, the world kept spinning, but inside our home we were finally still, finally whole, finally free. If this story moved you, resonated with something in your own life, or simply gave you a new perspective on the complexities of family and boundaries, we invite you to be part of our growing community. Subscribe to the channel for more powerful, real-life narratives that dig deep into the heart of human relationships. Stories of love, loss, resilience, and redemption. We release new content regularly, each one crafted to inspire reflection and meaningful conversation. And don't forget to leave a comment below. We'd love to know where you're watching from and what this story meant to you. Your voice matters, and your engagement helps us bring more of these stories to light. By subscribing, you're not just supporting our work, you're joining a space where difficult truths can be told with compassion and honesty. So go ahead, click that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and let's continue exploring what it really means to love, to protect, and sometimes to let go. Thank you for being here.